What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. As always, this is your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me as he does each and every time, my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Maneikis. What's going on, man?
Troy and Abed in the morning. I'm doing good, man. It's late. It's late. I'm a little loopy, a little wacky right now, but the Celtics got a big victory over the Kings, so happy to hop on here with you real quick, man, and just talk about how the Celtics finished the road trip 4-2 despite two horrible losses.
Yeah, this is a weird late night edition here of Green with Envy, recording this just before midnight here Central Time. If anybody in the world is up watching us on YouTube, appreciate y'all for checking in. Y'all are going to be the diehards that are out there with us. Just real quick, just to level set before we jump into this Celtics Kings game, we talked about it a little bit on the last podcast, but the three-man weave is back together. Now, what does that mean? Just to make sure that we're keeping this all straight for y'all, that means that some days you're going to be blessed with the three-man weave. That's what you're going to get. You're going to get myself, you're going to get Greg, you're going to get Adam. Some nights, especially after game recaps, you're going to get a lot of myself and Greg. Maybe early morning, you might get myself and Adam, might get Greg and Adam. That's kind of the joy of what the three of us got going on here. So you're going to hear us mixing and matching a bunch here as we really start to ramp up, especially with the playoffs going on. And then damn well we're going to be mixing in those three-man weaves when we can. But tonight, Greg, before we just hop into it, real quick, can we just take a collective sigh of relief? This tonight, first of all, woosah. Tonight was a night that I think if you were a Celtics fan, as Sean Grandy kind of talked about, if you were a Celtics fan that gritted it out and stayed up for this late West Coast game, I believe the last West Coast game of the season, you deserved it, you earned it, and goddamn did we need it.
Yeah, man. It was much needed, as I said. Yeah, Jayson Tatum was awesome. Jaylen Brown, awesome as well. The return of Robert Williams, I think that's probably the biggest story. But let's get into a one box score, and then we'll talk it through.
You know the drill, Greg. Let's cue it up. Boston Celtics take down the Sacramento Kings on the road, rounding out their 6-game road trip to go 4-2. Final score 132-109 for the Sacramento Kings. Domantas Sabonis 16 points, 13 rebounds, and 12 assists. De'Aaron Fox had 18 points on 6 of 11 from the field, and rookie Keegan Murray had 15 points and 5 rebounds. For the good guys over in green, Jayson Tatum, rebound game, 36 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. Jaylen Brown, 27, 5, and 4. Derek White, give the man his flowers, call the florist. He needs him again. 20 points, 7 rebounds, 11 assists. The Celtics only commit 5 total turnovers in this game, a few of those late. They shoot over 53% from the field. And I think most importantly, from a team perspective, pre garbage time minutes, Greg, they hold not just the number one offense in the league right now, the number one offense in the history of ever, as Sean Grandy mentioned, as our guy Brendan Nunez came on here last show and talked about this high voltage offense of the Sacramento Kings. 97 points pre-crunch time. They finish with 109 the last 4 or so minutes of the game. But Greg, you started to talk about this before we jumped into this morning box score. Jayson Tatum, who we made reference to, by the way, I was uploading some of our work, checking over some of our YouTube stuff. It was getting a little depressing. Like it probably wasn't as bad as it felt, but those were the topics that were jumping out. And in one of those videos, I referenced that Jayson Tatum, whose numbers, if you just look at the straight numbers, have still been really good post All-Star break, minus that 3-point shooting, but the straight flat numbers, 27, 10, 5, whatever it might be. He really needed a night where the numbers and the eye test lined up with each other and backed one another up. And he had that tonight with his 36, 8, and 4 performance.
Yeah, Jayson Tatum's floor is now becoming like 25, 12 rebounds and 3 assists. You know what I mean? Previous years, it was that game where he was 3 for 17 for 8 points, 4 rebounds, 7 turnovers. We're not really getting those games out of Jayson Tatum anymore. So like he's done a lot of what we wanted him to do, is just to raise that floor. And then that ceiling, man, whenever you see the Jayson Tatum ceiling games, this wasn't quite like through the roof Jayson Tatum, but this was everything you want from your superstar outside of a bad night at the free throw line. But he did get to the line 11 times, right? So I think a lot of that had to do with the offense the Celtics were running. I think it was very pointed that they put Tatum in the post on the first play of the game. He got to the line in the first play of the game. We probably went to Tatum post-ups 5 or 6 times as set plays to get him
Way
on the
more than
block.
I can remember. Maybe there's another game this year I'm not thinking of. Like we said, it's almost midnight here. It's weird. It's late. Maybe there's another game I'm thinking of, but to your point, it felt far more of an emphasis in this game than in at least any game off the top of my head that I can really think of right now.
Yeah, I think that's so important to get Tatum easy buckets early in games. He does so much for the offense, and I think Missoula has probably asked a little bit too much of him, especially in the absence of Marcus Smart when Smart was out. He just has to carry a lot of the load as a primary initiator of the offense for this team, and that wears on a guy. As someone who's played point guard, albeit on a rec league team, like it takes a lot out of you when you're the guy bringing the ball up every possession, and Tatum has to do that a little bit too much for this team. So to get him easy buckets off of some wedge screens, off some flex cuts, straight up just bully ball post ups, I think getting Tatum the ball on the block is such a efficient play for the Celtics. I don't have the numbers on it, but I did see some people tweeting out some Tatum post numbers that are just great this year. So I think if we can get Tatum easier buckets early in games, that's going to do a lot for his confidence. And it will also, another weapon for teams to have to worry about. And then we can play inside out and get open threes off of other action than just drive and kick.
Yeah, and I think it really opened up his mentality to get to the cup a little bit more. I mentioned some of his stats that we talked about in the last episode where, post All-Star break, his splits have been fairly similar. It's been average. He's been averaging one more 3-point attempt per game, one less 2-point shot per game. So to see it kind of flip back tonight to what I think it really needs to be. And I was a little worried early on. Early on, I thought he had a couple of questionable 3-point shots that, here's the thing. It's Jayson Tatum. So it's never really a true questionable shot because he can make the shot. You know what I mean? But it's the quality of attempts, and it plays into the whole offense that the Celtics are running. And I think once they kind of got him a few more touches in the post, I think the play for me that really stood out was, after it was a little bit sloppy, De'Aaron Fox gets called for, this is right before the end of the first half, gets called for that foul. And, that little, just inbounding the ball to him on the wing, that left wing that he loves. He loves his little step back move to the wing. It's always there. And that's the thing. It's always there. And it's a shot that I trust him to take and makes. I know I've seen him do it a bunch. And he could have just fallen into that. And he didn't. And he drove to the lane and got an and-one right before the half. I thought that was a very significant play just for the way that, going back to the eye test of what we've seen on this road trip, which is what I think led to a bit of the concern more than, they ended up 4-2 on a really weird road trip. When you look at, 4 different time zones or whatever the hell it was, like that's a really weird road trip towards the end of the season. There's only 9 games left. And so when you factor all that in, it wasn't pretty, but you get to 4-2. It's a pretty damn good road trip. And so to end it with an eye test like this and with a play like that, where Tatum could have settled for an easier, lazier shot, he made the, he made the conscious decision to go to the cup, end the half, and I think really set the Celtics up for success going into that second half, which I think, the first half was great. Second half was, I think, some of the best Celtics basketball, at least in recent memory, that we've seen in quite a bit here.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just Tatum either, right? Jaylen Brown was amazing in this game, 10 for 16 from the field, 4 for 7 from 3, 27 points. The Jays combined only 2 turnovers. The team only 5 turnovers in this game. 33 assists to 5 turnovers. That is quite the assist to turnover ratio. Jaylen Brown, I think he was awesome in this one as well. He's continued his stellar play of late. Thought he did a good job on De'Aaron Fox. Like, obviously, De'Aaron Fox is going to get his. He's going to blow by you and make you look stupid from time to time. But I thought Jaylen Brown did a good job limiting De'Aaron Fox. He was matched up with him for, I don't know how many possessions, but a significant amount of them. Al Horford, super efficient as well. But I think we got to talk about Derek White, right? Derek White, 37 minutes, almost 38 minutes in this game, Will. He was, as we've been saying, he's the 3rd best player on the Celtics team, and he played like it tonight. got minutes in that fourth quarter in the crunch time lineup as we were trying to close it out. There wasn't really like actual crunch time in this game because we blew them out. But I think it was very noticeable that Joe Mazzulla was trying out his playoff rotation. And it seems like if this game is any indication of what his playoff rotation is, there's a lot more Derek White and there's no bad defensive players on the court.
Yeah, that was another part that really jumped out to me up until you get to about the last 3-4 minutes when you and I were texting. I wasn't quite sure Mazzulla was actually going to pull the troops there up 23 or whatever it was. Thank God he did, or at least pull most of them. But you really did see kind of the 8-man rotation that we've been expecting to see, which in part we haven't due to injury. And then once one guy's out, it's been getting a little bit weird as we've discussed on several recent episodes. And so you look at the amount of time Derek White's out there. I think that's a big point, just under 38 minutes for him tonight. And I mean, you saw all the reasons why we've been calling him the third best player on this team this year. He did a little bit of everything. And you felt the ball moving. The ball movement in that second half was a thing of beauty. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, you have Rob Williams coming back. And I like this Rob Williams coming off the bench. It did feel like there was a bit more energy. And something that I was curious to know as the coach of our podcast, if you noticed, at least this stood out for me. In that first half, I thought Sabonis was awesome. I thought Sabonis was a big problem for us in that first half. I thought there were, he was obviously facilitating, but I thought there was also some moments on the boards and just him with the ball where he just kind of bullied us a little bit. There's that one play where Eddie House was pointing up. By the way, shout out to Eddie, like Eddie House in the call. I'm a big fan of the Grandy Eddie House combo. I would much prefer that going forward. Neither here nor there. But where Sabonis has Horford on the block and kind of dribbles him back like 5 times, like kind of powered Al. No one comes for the double. I don't know if it was an and one, but I know Sabonis gets 2 on it. It felt like in that second half, the Celtics picked him up a bit higher and with a bit more force and maybe just more eyeballs on him. But it felt like there was really a concentrated effort on Sabonis, who was a problem in that first half. I think that was a major turning point in the second half for that Celtics as a collective defense.
Yeah, in the second half, I don't know if they actually did it or if my eyes were playing tricks on me, but it seemed like they were trying to scram
late night.
out.
Anything could be true.
Yeah, they were trying to scram out their guards a little bit more. They had Grant as a primary defender. They had Rob back in his rover spot along the baseline so he could take Sabonis on any roll action. That frustrated Rob. He ended up with 5 fouls in that game, got his tech because Sabonis was just doing what Sabonis does, which is just act like a battering ram and slam his way down to the paint and down around the rebounding area, and that's what Sabonis does. I think with the Celtics, like the idea that you can play a backup big rotation of Grant Williams and Robert Williams, like the Williams brothers are going to be huge in the playoffs, especially going up against the centers and forwards that we're going to be going up against the playoffs. This is why we've been saying for so long, it's been so weird to see Grant just completely out of the rotation for a few games. Maybe that's Mazzulla just trying to manage injuries. Maybe that's him sending a message. Maybe that's him rewarding Sam Hauser and keeping him in a rhythm. Who knows what's going on in Mazzulla madness. But I think with Grant and Rob tonight and seeing those 2 along with Malcolm Brogdon off the bench in the 8-man rotation, as I just said, there is not a bad defensive player in that 8-man rotation. Sam Hauser is probably going to be the 9th guy, and there are going to be a lot of games where Sam is called upon just for a few spot minutes here or there, maybe if there's foul trouble. But this is going to be huge for the Celtics for the last 9 games of the season and moving into the playoffs, is developing an identity back on the defensive end with 8 guys who have no excuses. You cannot point to anybody on the court now and say, we're doing bad on the defensive end because player X is on the court. Every single one of those 8 people can guard their yard and they can all switch. This is like the defensive blueprint that you want in today's modern NBA.
Yeah, I thought the defense was really impressive tonight for large stretches. And, I think we got to talk a little bit here. This is obviously the Rob Williams returns for this particular game here. He comes off the bench like we're talking about. Just give me kind of your initial thoughts or just how do you think Rob looked? Never mind the stats. How do you think Rob looked tonight?
He looked awesome, man. He looked awesome. I didn't see him grabbing at his hamstring. Didn't see him grabbing at his knee at all. He looked springy. He looked strong. He's been in the weight room over the last couple of years so that he can take the force of a Sabonis shoulder to his chest and not move an inch. That one play where he ended up getting a foul, but he blocked the and one attempt. I thought that was huge. Eddie House even called it out on the broadcast where he was like, wow, that was an impressive second jump by Rob, because you don't know how someone's going to react after coming back from a hamstring injury. Hamstring injuries are a pain in the butt, quite literally. So I think with Rob, like looking springy on the court, looking energized, communicating on the defensive end, being that rover position on the back line. He did everything that you need from Rob in those 21 minutes that he played. And this is why I said I think Rob should come off the bench, man, because it's a lot easier to find minutes for the bigs if you're really just playing a 2-big rotation. Grant, you can call him a big, but he's really not. So with Al Horford playing 27 minutes, Robert Williams playing 21 minutes, that's an even split. Will, can you do that math? How many minutes is that? 27 and 21.
Calculating. Hold on. Let me check with Missoula. Missoula, what does that equal? 48.
48 minutes. That's it, man. You play 2 centers. That's your lineup. 48 minutes of 2 centers. And that's what you need out of those guys. Save Al's legs, get Rob back into the rotation, have him make a difference. And it looked like I would have to double check the lineup numbers, but it seemed like Missoula was trying to go to that 2-big lineup with the Jays and a shooter, right? In the fourth quarter, we saw a little bit of Brogdon at the point guard. We saw a little bit of White at the point guard there. We didn't see much of Marcus Smart with those 4 guys. So Missoula, maybe he is looking at the data, man. We know he loves data.
It's all computing right now. It's going to download overnight. But yeah, I thought Rob looked good as well. I thought he looked springy. I thought he looked like himself. I liked to the point that you're saying here of if you're going to play one big at a time, and they did play obviously Rob and Al a little bit together in the court at the same time. But if you're going to go kind of one big on, one big off, having Rob out there to just give a little bit of a different feel to that second unit, I think really does make a big difference. So yeah, I thought he looked great. I think tonight was a very encouraging sign. I think it's perfect timing, right? They had the 2 days off coming in, which obviously Rob came back just tonight, but now they have 2 more days off before they play Indiana on Friday. So kind of the perfect time to bring Rob back, see how he heals up after playing 20 plus minutes. You did mention Marcus Smart. I feel like we just need to talk about him just for a minute. This is just one of those classically funny Marcus Smart games at this point where
he shot 3 straight air balls.
That was insane. That was I didn't know what to do at that point. And the thing was, at least 2 of them, if my memory serves me correctly, were off great ball movement. One of them was off a dime from Brogdon across the other side of the court, where they were all kind of the right shot, but just I've never seen a professional basketball player who still made 3 threes in the game, missed 3 consecutive shots that badly. And then he makes a bunch of other Marcus Smart plays, and I mean that in both ways that you can take it. And so, he ends up with a 17-point, 7 assists, 1 turnover game, despite shooting 6 of 15 and 3 of 9 with 3 air balls, essentially. Like, just a weird Marcus Smart night.
You know what I really liked about that moment, though, is that Missoula took him out of the game. I feel like that was one of those moments we've been calling for a while now, is when Marcus is just melting down on the court and just shooting air ball after air ball or turnover after turnover, no matter what point of the game is. That Marcus just needs to sit for a minute. He just does. Like he just overheats at times, and Missoula needs to recognize that. And I was very happy that he did. On the last pod we did with Adam and Brendan, we were talking about how Missoula hasn't learned his lessons quick enough this season. Well, that was a growing moment, I think, for Missoula to be like, you know what, Marcus, just come sit over here for a little bit.
You know who I think might be agreeing with Envy listener?
Joe Missoula.
I think crazy Joe Missoula might be a GWE stan. He just, he's keeping it in the background. Joe, come on the podcast, man. We're happy to talk it out with you. We'll set you up with the programming in advance. We'll make sure that you understand what's going on here. But yeah, no, I think that's a great call out and just a classic Marcus Smart game. Just a great game for the Celtics to feel good about. For Celtics fans, never mind the Celtics. Celtics fans needed this. Just needed to feel better about things right now. Celtics, they get their 50th win of the year. They got a blessing from the Sixers last night, who fell to the Bulls in a weird double overtime game. And so, now they're back a full game ahead of the 76ers, still 2 games back of the Bucks with a game against the Bucks coming up in about a week or so, about a week and a half. And that, if they win that game, if they can maintain within being a game or two right there, if they can keep at this pace, they're going to have a shot at that one seed. They're going to have an outside shot. They've got to knock down the pins for these next couple of games against Indiana and San Antonio. Those are games where if they do end up slipping up, I'm not going to overreact, but you got to put the one seed to bed if you're going to lose to the Pacers or the Spurs at this time of the season. If you're going to lose those games, listen, it might happen, but put the one seed to bed. We're gonna have to take that out of the rotation moving forward. But
I think it's important, Will, for the Celtics to get the 2 seed because I don't know if you've seen, but the Miami Heat are a half game back of the Brooklyn Nets right now, and they're probably gonna end up with the 6 seed. So if we end up with the 3 seed, that means a first round matchup with the Miami Heat. We were thinking at one point the 2 seed might not be much of a prize because the Heat were probably going to, slide in there at the 7 seed. But if they slide into the 6 seed, I do not want anything to do with the Miami Heat in round 1. So that 2 seed is huge.
I'm not as bothered by I'm bothered by the Heat in the sense that I just don't enjoy Heat versus Celtic basketball. I just don't think it's very fun. So in that sense, I don't want to see them. But at the end of the day, obviously I'd rather see the Nets than the Heat. But we kind of went through this conundrum a little bit last year where it was, oh man, I don't want that, I don't want that Nets matchup. And we swept that matchup, And so with the Heat, however it falls, it may fall. I would just prefer the 2 seed before, for that home court in that second round. That's something that I would prefer.
Of course. I'm not saying we're going to lose to the Heat. I think we're going to beat the Heat and probably beat them in 6 games, but I just don't want to
set you up for.
Exactly. I don't want to go up against Jimmy Butler and just relive the trauma of last year. I don't want Bam Adebayo to throw an elbow on a screen or hurt Marcus Smart. There's just all these things that can happen against the Heat that I just don't want anything to do with. I'm not scared they're going to beat us. They're not going to beat us. We're way better than they are. Anything else you want to talk about the game?
I got nothing on this here. Let's take a quick break and this is gonna be a quick podcast here. So let's take a quick break. When we come back, we got to touch on our boy Jaylen Brown here. All right, Greg. So over the last couple of days prior to the Celtics game against the Kings, there have been multiple articles about Jaylen Brown that have come out. One of them in the New York Times by Sopan Deb, which was published on March 17th. And then just earlier today on March 21st, Logan Murdoch of The Ringer had an article entitled Jaylen Brown is trying to find a balance. Both of these were fairly similar articles. And I think our guy Bobby Manning over at CLNS and part of Celtics blog, I know he has a few thoughts coming out on this if it's not already out on Celtics blog by the time you're listening to this. But he made a great point because I think a lot of people took this as trying to read into this. What does this mean? These 2 articles at the same time seemingly come out on Jaylen Brown. Supposedly Logan Murdoch was in Boston around January doing these conversations, writing this article about Jaylen Brown. And then once the New York Times dropped an article, it's one of those things where does the Ringer sit on the same article and see what happens in the postseason and run it? Or do they try to catch the second wave of people already talking about Jaylen Brown and what turned out to be a very similar article? So I want to just throw that out there because I know people were trying to read into what this means. And it's honestly, it seems like a little bit of coincidental timing that it's coming out this close together. So I think that's important for context. But Greg, I want you to kind of steer us here into your thoughts a little bit. I'm sure I'll touch on this with Adam a little bit later in the week when we get everybody set up for the weekend. So I want to start with just your thoughts on it. I know you mostly read the Logan Murdoch piece on The Ringer, which is the most recent of the 2 articles.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in this article. I don't want to get too deep in this conversation because it is just past midnight now. And that's just a little late for a super deep conversation about this article. But just in terms of what Celtics fans are probably thinking about right now are a few comments that Jaylen made just regarding the organizational trust and maybe the lack of it or the breakdown of trust that has happened with him and the organization as his name has been floated out there in trade rumors. He addresses the Jayson Tatum, Kevin Durant photo of last summer, which was happening as the rumors are swirling that KD might go to Boston. And then all of a sudden, if you don't remember, Jayson Tatum takes a picture working out with Kevin Durant. And I guess Jaylen was taken aback by it. He didn't know, because he knew that they were friends. He heard the rumors, and he had to have a 3-way call with Brad Stevens and Jayson Tatum. Like, they had to actually arrange that. That was the piece that stood out to me, because we didn't really hear much about that from Tatum. We didn't hear much about that from Brown. And just like knowing that it did affect Jaylen, as it obviously should have, because he's a human being. It's surprising to me that their relationship is as strong as it is to this day, because like, I don't know how Jayson Tatum let that photo get out there, bro. Like, that was just not a good look. Like, how like off the grid do you have to be to not realize that Kevin Durant is being rumored to be traded for your buddy Jaylen Brown, and then to tweet that picture? It was just really ridiculous when it happened at the time. So looking back on it, it's amazing that their relationship is strong. That was like my first big takeaway from the article, was that Jaylen Brown is bigger man than I would be, because I'd be like, nah, fuck that guy.
Yeah, no, and that speaks to hopefully the strength of their relationship. And we had this when when we had Dana Barros on a little while back. He talked about how, oh yeah, they used to come to my gym and work out together. And so, there's always going to be a lot of stuff that you don't see, in front of the cameras, that you don't see behind the scenes. They talk a little bit about this in their sit down with KG and Paul Pierce as well, just kind of about their relationship. I mean, the thing for me that I think people got a little bit worried about is that there wasn't this, steadfast commitment to, I want to be in Boston. And listen, Jaylen, to me, when I read the article, was basically, I've got to assess everything and do the decision that makes the most sense for me, both on the court and with my, what I want to do off the court as well. And so to me, that just sounded like a very rational decision that he should be making, that he should be taking into account, just the way the Celtics would be taking into account the option to trade him for Kevin Durant. It's the same kind of options that you're weighing. It's two different sides of the coin. So to me, while I thought the interview and the piece itself, I read both pieces, were well done. They're both very similar. Both, as soon as any mention of, speaking directly about Kanye West got brought up, were both shut down. Basically the same verbatim answer of not answering that question. But I think Jaylen Brown is just a very unique individual who, you said before, is kind of, a lineage to the past and Bill Russell, and being very active, socially, being social activism, civil rights, being involved in that manner. And, Jaylen Brown, I think the answers that he gave in this article and in the interview, they were what I kind of expect from Jaylen Brown, a guy who's very forward thinking, a guy who's very progressive thinking. And at the end of the day, I think my gut would say that I think he's probably still going to end up in Boston. And if you're a Celtics fan, here's what you really need to do: root for him to make the All-NBA team. If he makes the All-NBA team, it is a massive generational financial investment for him to turn that down. That would be, I think, if he makes All-NBA this season, I believe, and Keith Smith has a great article on Spot Track that breaks it all down. So apologize for not having that pulled up at this moment. But I know there's a world in which Jaylen Brown makes All-NBA, signs a deal with the Celtics, an extension, where the fourth year of that deal is worth $66 million for 1 year. So if you're a Celtics fan and you're really just wanting Jaylen Brown to be in green, let's hope he makes the All-NBA this year, because it's going to be pretty hard for him not to be a member of this team if that's the case.
Yeah, and he deserves it. I was actually texting back and forth with my high school coach, Brendan Smith, who runs ASA Hoops back in Massachusetts. And we were talking about Jaylen a little bit, talking about the article, talking about him as a player. I've been Team JB. I have since day one. I love Jaylen Brown. I love everything he stands for as a human being. And I love the development and the growth he's shown as a basketball player. I think the growth that you see is a product of his character, which is someone who's going to work really hard every single day. And he's just a well-rounded human being, and I just really respect that, because I think all the people that tell athletes like shut up and dribble, I think it's ridiculous. Like, I think anybody should be able to express themselves no matter what their platform is. If you work in McDonald's or you work in the NBA, like, you have every right to your opinion and you have every right to a platform, whatever that platform is. But I was talking with Brendan, and, I was just saying, like, why would you ever want Jaylen Brown gone at any point? And Brendan's take was, he sees Jaylen more as a me over a we guy. And I kind of asked him to elaborate about that a little bit. And he just thinks that like the timing of the article and all the stuff that he's saying right now, shows that he's putting himself before the organization, which makes sense that Brendan would say that. He's a coach first. He's like my coach, my high school basketball coach, and he's very team oriented. And my thing was, man, I don't think he's a me guy at all. I think he's a we guy. It's just like his we isn't just the Celtics, right? His we is his community. His we is society. His we is being part of the NBA Players Association, right? And that was a huge part of this article with Kyrie. It's like they talk about it. They say him and Kyrie did not vibe in Boston. They were not friends. They did not.
That was also pretty interesting to read about, right? That he would be the young guy that would stick his chest out and go back at Kyrie in the locker room.
Yeah, and I liked that. And then I think a lot of people were confused recently because that was always the rumor, is that they didn't really get along. And then when JB was like kind of seen supporting Kyrie, and everyone was just like, wait, I thought you hated Kyrie. And it's like, no, Jaylen Brown doesn't hate Kyrie. He doesn't love Kyrie. He supports Kyrie as, a fellow basketball player and, someone who he has to represent as a member of the NBA Players Association, So that was a big part of the article. It's like, listen, it's my job. Like, how do people not understand that? Maybe nobody really understands what the Players Association is designed to do, but it's there to protect the rights of the players. You know what I mean? And Jaylen Brown was just like, I thought it was just unfair, the way that he was treated in Brooklyn. And it didn't matter that it was Kyrie. It was just he saw somebody that was being treated unfairly, that was having their voice taken away, and he felt like he needed to speak up as part of the Players Association. That is his job. Like that's the thing that I think maybe people don't have the context for that. They don't understand like that's actually his role. But that was a big thing with the article for me, is I just like Jaylen Brown a lot. I want him in Boston. And I agree with you. If he makes the All-NBA team, it's going to go a long way to keeping him here.
Yeah, that would be a really tough turn down if that were to be the case. And the other thing I just want to always remind people, Jaylen Brown was asked most of these questions. Jaylen Brown didn't go around typing up a blog and then go ahead and put these out into the ether on a random Monday or Sunday because he felt frustrated. He was asked by the New York Times. He was asked by The Ringer to do a feature article, and he answered some questions. That's all he did. That's literally, when you want to boil it down to anything else, that's what happened. And then I talked about at the beginning, these are two, editorial organizations that are trying to fight for clicks. And so one beat the other one to the punch. The other one tried to ride the wave. That's the only reason why you're seeing these come out consecutively together. So I really think, to me, I didn't feel like it was that big of a deal. I thought there were some interesting insights. Nothing to me sounded imminent one way or the other. Like, oh my God, I'm so worried he's going to leave Boston. Like I said, the all NBA thing kind of sorts most of this out. And I think there's still a lot of, just everything the Celtics have building here. To me, I didn't read that article as Jaylen Brown is on his way out of town. We better start looking for trade candidates, but it does leave that as a possibility. And so, I think either you texted or tweeted this puts a lot of emphasis on this playoff run to see what happens. So it is going to get interesting come the postseason time, and having these articles out there, they will be lingering over and be resurfaced, depending on how this playoff run goes. But either way, anything else that you have that you wanted to add to this, Greg? I've kind of expanded my thoughts on it for now.
Yeah, we went deeper than I thought we would. Just for Celtics fans that haven't read that article, here's one quote. If you haven't seen this, because this probably wasn't polled and aggregated anywhere, but Jaylen Brown did say, when asked about his future, I don't really know or want to answer that question because that type of stuff makes Celtics fans speculate and go crazy, especially right now. I'll just say we'll get there when we get there. Again, as you said earlier, an expected answer from Jaylen Brown. He's not going to commit. He's not going to not commit. He's going to be like, hey, I'm a human being. I'm going to keep it real with you. I don't know. That day is not here. We will get there when we get there. He talks in the article. I just want to focus on what's in front of me right now. That's it. I love you, JB. I hope you're here long time.
You got real soft and emotional there. Yeah, and I like that as a way to end it. But that'll do it. That will put a bow on it right here. That's going to be the end of this episode of Green with Envy. We'll be back later in the week. Myself and Adam, I believe, are gonna lay one down for y'all here, set y'all up for the weekend, review the road trip. So we'll have another pod coming here later in the week before we reunite the 3-man weave over the weekend. Greg, any final thoughts? And then, as always, let us know what we're going to hear on the way out.
Sweet dreams, everybody. You know the drill. Black Sheep Optimist, Skywalking. Peace, everybody. Thanks for those of you that are in the chat.
Peace.